All right, we're here with Lyn Askin. What's up, Lyn?
Hey, how you doing, Sean?
How
It's
you
good to be
been?
here.
Good to see you.
That's great to see you too.
Where are you at in the world right now?
I live in Louisiana. I live just outside of Lafayette, Louisiana, about 10, 15 miles from there. Lafayette's one of the largest cities in Louisiana. The University of Louisiana is there. And we live about 15 miles, 15, 20 miles outside of there.
Nice. And then, so you were in Las Vegas first, and how'd you end up in Louisiana?
Oh, well, a woman. I was born in Las Vegas. I was always one of those guys who's like, I was actually from there. There wasn't a lot. It's a lot of the people that I knew weren't from there. They're from other places. But I was born in Vegas, and when I was able to finally kind of get out, I don't know. We'll talk about that a little more because it's kind of interesting. Is that I realized that I didn't need to be there anymore. Some things changed in our life. We got married, had a baby, and our friends didn't, they didn't change with us, and we were just sort of, we were sort of outside of one very particular event. Went out to dinner with a bunch of friends still, and brought a baby carrier, and we're like, what are we doing? Like, this is just nuts, right? And so, at some point we were like, man, we don't, there's nothing really holding us here. And Abby's parents lived in Louisiana, and we wanted to be close to either her parents or mine. And my parents lived in Montana, and hers in Louisiana, and we ended up here.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah, it's funny talking about when people actually get married and have babies, and then introduce them to like the Vegas lifestyle. It's like a lot of friends out here kind of like, wait, what is this? Like, because a lot of people in Vegas, they call it like Peter Pan syndrome. We don't really grow up. You stay in the industry for so long, you still think you're in your 20s, and you're that 40-year-old guy in the club.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, and I don't have any moral issue with Vegas. I mean, I grew up there. I spent a lot of my life there, and it's difficult. I didn't want to explain to my 4-year-old son as we were driving by why every taxi cab had a naked girl picture on it. It's like, it just, we wanted an opportunity to raise him in a small town, and give him some of the I don't know, the quality of life that we were hoping for, or that even I had as a kid in Vegas in the 70s.
Yeah, I agree. I grew up in Huntington Beach, and just going like riding my skateboard up and down Main Street, and then being in high school and like getting in fights with tourists, and the cops remember us from being that little five-year-old skateboarder and stuff. They'd kick the other people out and just tell us to go home. And
That's amazing.
there's something to be said about living like small town living for sure.
For sure.
So let's talk about like when you first entered the workforce in Las Vegas. Like what were your jobs? Like what venues do you work at? What'd you do?
Well, my dad, let's start here. My dad moved to my parents are from Montana originally, and my mom and dad moved to Vegas in the 60s. My dad was a blackjack dealer at first the Mint downtown, and then he opened the International, which then became the Hilton in '69. I guess the International opened. Until last night, I had no idea it's now called the Westgate, which is crazy. I just think of it as the Las Vegas Hilton.
Oh, that was years ago.
Man, I had no idea. I've been away for a while, but I was born in 1970. Lived over on View Drive in kind of Charleston Heights area of Vegas. Went to Red Rock Elementary, which was right across the street from my house. But after fifth grade, my mom and dad moved back to Montana. So I went to high school, a couple of years of college in Montana. Was a struggling kid with no money, and I ended up going to my brother's wedding in Las Vegas, probably in 90, 91. And just the allure of Vegas, the opportunity for jobs and money and that sort of thing, sort of just pulled me back to Vegas when I turned 21. I started out, and it was tough to get a job there at first for me. Started out, I think the first job I got was at a hardware store out in Henderson. Um, at some point along the way, I got an interview at the Mirage to be a busboy in the showroom, Siegfried Roy, in the Siegfried Roy showroom. And I didn't get the job, but I was persistent. I just kept going back. I just kept going back to them like every couple of weeks, like, hey, is that job still available? And I just showed like this persistence, and eventually they got tired of me coming in and hired me. And so I worked in the Siegfried Roy showroom as a busboy. So I basically saw Siegfried Roy twice a night in the height of Siegfried Roy for a year. So it's pretty cool. it was a pretty cool experience. You know,
Okay,
it's some
I have to ask, were you there the night that he got eaten by the tiger?
no, no, no. This was way before that.
Okay.
You know, yeah, that was pretty far after we'd moved away. Um, uh, but yeah, no, that's I mean tragic. But no, I worked there about a year, probably somewhere in 91 or so. Um, I I was working with a guy named Antonio, and Antonio was a busboy with me, and he was from Mexico. He was such a hard worker. He wanted to advance just like all of us did, but he went to dealer school, and Antonio went to dealer school. He got a job at the Barbary Coast, and then he's like, "Hey, Lynn, you should do this too." And I mean, Sean, I grew up. My dad was a dealer. I grew up with a deck of cards in my hand. Um, I went to dealer school. In fact, I think Antonio loaned me the $300 to go to dealer school, so I could go to dealer school. They kept me a week at dealer school. I got a job over at the Barbary Coast also, and but I kept my job at the Mirage. So we were both working. Um, we worked 5 at night till 1 in the morning at the Mirage. I'd run home and take a quick shower, go back to the Barbary Coast at 3 and work from 3 to 11. And then I'd repeat that. You know, I'd go home and I'd sleep as fast as you can, you know, got to get up again, got to beat the Mirage at 5 again. And I did that for months. Just what I was trying to do there was just get enough dealing experience, having my in at the Mirage, being an employee already, and trying to get myself down as a dealer's job at the Golden Nugget. And eventually that actually worked out. So got a job dealing at the Golden Nugget, worked there for a couple years. Um, then Treasure Island opened, I guess, in probably October of 93, I think, if I remember correctly. So opened a brand new place on the strip. That was pretty cool experience. Um,
So now this is when Steve Wynn owned the Mirage, and when Steve Wynn owned the Golden Nugget, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
So the Mirage and the Golden Nugget were together, and then he opened Treasure Island. So you know we basically just got to transfer over, open Treasure Island, worked there a couple years. Eventually got transferred over to the Mirage as a dealer, and that was like big time. Like being a dealer at the Mirage was one of the best jobs in Vegas.
Oh
And
yeah,
so you
I
know
remember
I moved
when.
over there in about 95, and I dealt there for probably 3 years. And then Bellagio opened in 98, and I got promoted to the floor. I thought I was going to the floor at the Bellagio, but they kept me at the Mirage, and I got promoted to the floor on the Mirage, and I was casino floor supervisor there for, I don't know, for the next few years. So, I mean, that's basically my journey in, you know, starting as a busboy in the Siegfried and Roy showroom to, you know, being a floor supervisor on the high limit pit at the Mirage.
That's amazing. I remember when the Mirage was like the pinnacle, like hottest spot on the strip.
Yep. Yep. I was there. It was crazy.
And how was the Golden Nugget back then? 'Cause remember, I worked at the Golden Nugget for 4.5 years just last year.
The Golden Nugget was a great job. It was, you know, by far like there was nothing downtown that could touch it. We made good money at the Golden Nugget. I mean, I went from making, you know, nothing at Barbary Coast over to you know making $40,000-$50,000 a year as a 21-year-old kid at the Golden Nugget dealing blackjack. And then of course each one of those next steps was a pretty significant step up. But the Golden Nugget was a great place.
Nice.
It was felt small, but it was nice, and it just, you know, sort of felt like family.
Nice. Yeah, I know later on when Tillman Fertitta bought it, he expanded it and grew it exponentially. I mean, it's huge now. It's 2,400 hotel rooms now.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. How was the clientele downtown back then?
It was really good in the Golden Nugget. You know, it was always fun to walk over across the street to the Horseshoe or something after work and play. You know, you could barely see through the smoke, and it was very old time saloony. And Benny Binion was from Montana, so you know my family knew his family and stuff like that, and so it was really kind of interesting that the contrast between those two places, you know, the Golden Nugget and the sort of the polish that was there, and the just the raw Vegas of the Horseshoe.
Yeah, you got to come back now. They opened another hotel right across called Circa. It's like a strip property, gorgeous, gorgeous. They did a really good job on it. I was just there last week.
Really, I can't even imagine. Like I went back to Vegas probably 10 years ago. It was just after sort of the biggest boom, and I didn't recognize my hometown. Like I would literally drive down the street and, City Center wasn't there when I left, but when I came back, there's 10 new hotels that I didn't recognize. I mean, it had changed so much that I didn't know what some certain buildings were. And I grew up there. I lived there most of my life, and it changed dramatically after I had, left and come back.
Yeah, it really has. I came here. My family moved here when I was in like eighth grade. And I was like, I'm never leaving the beach. Da, da, da. But I remember my mom would always try to make me come out here, and then I was a delinquent. I'd do everything I could, get kicked out of school and get sent back to my dad's house in Huntington because again, I didn't want to be in the desert. I want to be at the beach. But I just
Right.
remember like they all bought houses right by each other at the lakes, and there's just a dirt road going out to there. There was nothing there.
Yep.
So Vegas has changed so much.
Yeah. I think Rainbow was, I mean, you know, there was a place right near my house, behind like Fletcher Jones Chevrolet. I don't even know if those things exist anymore, but it was this sort of desert. We'd ride our bikes as a kid. There was a place called the Gray Hole. It was like this meteor crater that we'd go and play in, and it was kind of an amazing way to grow up. We had Falcon Hill and Alpha Hill there, and we'd ride our skateboards and bikes up and down in the area, and I don't know, it was a pretty amazing childhood, and I think back about how far I would actually ride my bike away from my house. And like, I can't believe my parents wouldn't let me. I won't let my son like walk to Subway, like, and my parents are like, yeah, just go, and I'd get on my bike and I would ride, and we didn't have any fear back then. And I don't know if that was justified or if it was just a different time, but I really did have an amazing childhood, with the neighborhood kids, and riding our bikes and playing in the desert and catching lizards. And I don't know, it was just an amazing time.
It's funny. I used to ride my bike from like Flamingo and Jones down to the Mirage to see the volcano.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's as a kid, you're crossing major streets, you're on the strip, you're doing all this stuff. I mean, yeah, it's,
Oh no, we used to ride our bikes to the McDonald's there on Charleston Expressway, and we had to cross the traffic. And like, I don't know, it's just the fear that I have now, I guess, being older, and maybe, experience the world a little bit. Um, Man, I would have never let my son do
yeah.
that.
Yeah, it
So,
was definitely a much freer time back then. I mean, I remember riding in the back of like trucks without seat belts, and like kids didn't wear helmets. I mean, it's a lot more free now or then.
oh, for sure. I mean, we'd ride in the back of the truck. My parents had one of them old station wagons with the backward seat, and we just seatbelt. I don't even know what that is. So,
Yeah. I think
very
that's why
cool.
our generation is becoming so soft because we coddle them too much.
I think maybe so.
Yeah. What was your favorite part about working in hospitality?
Um, Honestly, my favorite thing was probably the people. I met so many interesting people, working in, again, starting the from the Barbary to the Golden Nugget to Treasure Island to the Mirage. And one of my favorite things to do, because I've always sort of been entrepreneurial, is to ask people what they did for a living. And so I met people that I met an onion farmer, that was playing thousands of dollars a hand in blackjack. I met a sod farmer. I met a guy who, he ran like the recycling in Louisville, Kentucky, and the city was paying him to pick up recycling. And I just kept meeting all these fascinating people, and I think maybe part of that helped drive my entrepreneurial spirit, just realizing that there was something else out there.
That's awesome. I love that. That's the one thing that I mean. You meet so many connections in hospitality. There's people sitting at your bar, people sitting at your table, people sitting. When you're dealing, just the conversations you have from people of all walks of life. It truly is fascinating.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, again, about dealing at the Mirage, dealing in the high limit pit, dealing in the salon, like I was a huge sports fan in Vegas. It's hard not to be, with the sports betting and the college basketball and all those things. And I dealt to Michael Jordan 100 times. I dealt to Wayne Gretzky, Dan Marino, John Elway, to race car drivers like Jeff Gordon and Dale Jarrett, Charles Barkley, Dennis Rodman, music stars like, Puff Daddy and Jennifer Lopez, Salma Hayek, Vanna White, Uma Thurman was amazing. Just every night was sort of like this new adventure. You just never knew what was going to happen, and you didn't know if you didn't know what kind of players were going to come. I mean, we had players that were in these private rooms that you didn't know their names, but they could play, $20,000 hand in blackjack or whatever. It was really an interesting time, and I thought it was always a little bit fascinating. I think that was probably my favorite part, is just the unknown, and you just never knew who you were going to meet.
Yeah, that's true. I spent 10 years at Hard Rock when in the heyday too. So like celebrities, every day. I had a lot of great stories with a lot of a lot of people.
For sure, for
A
sure.
lot of them I can't really talk about here.
Yeah, that's true.
What do you think was your least favorite part about working in the industry?
Honestly, Sean, I think I have the same answer for you.
The
The
people.
people. I
That
think
comes
it's
up a lot, honestly.
really, I think that's the same answer. I mean, I think, um, you know, dealing blackjack in a high limit, or in any situation, sometimes you deal to people, or you deal with people who can't afford to gamble the money that they're gambling. And some of those interactions can be pretty contentious. The yelling, the banging of the table, the occasional players with a bunch of money who got to do things like rip up the cards, those sort of things. If you have enough money, you can do whatever you want. At least, back then, those things really got to me. I didn't understand that, and I wasn't very well equipped to handle that kind of I don't know, anger or frustration or whatever. And so I think that's probably what was beating me down the most, was just that kind of interaction.
Yeah, I agree. I took a step back from nightlife and went to work at just a small little gaming bar. And I would sit there, and people just sit and play on the machines all day long. And I would literally go home, sleep, go out my day, come back. The same person still sitting there drinking and smoking, playing on the machine, bitching about how broke they are. Their wife left them. I'm like, maybe there's a reason, a pattern, but I'm like, obviously you couldn't say that, but I'm just watching these people again gamble money that they can't afford to gamble, and just like ruining their life right in front of your eyes, and you're feeding them booze during it. It got to me too. I think I did that for about 3 weeks. I couldn't do it anymore.
I think being in those situations also, it does something to your morality. I think it stretches your morality in places that it shouldn't, and the regular world doesn't. And what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. It's true also for the people who live there. I think the opportunities there, to be bad, are just so great, and the temptation's so great, that I think it changes who you are as a person sometimes. And if you don't keep a handle on that, I mean, I think it can cause real conflict in yourself. And I've always believed that you need to, what you do for a living, and how you behave, has to meet up with your own moral code, or you will burn out, or it'll hurt you. And I don't know, I think in a lot of ways that happened to me. I just, stepping away from that kind of thing, I honestly just became a better person again. And I, I I don't know, that was the toughest part of the job, I think.
No, that's 100% true. I mean, I've been in Vegas for, on and off for 20 years. I've seen so many people move to this town, get so caught up in the scene that they literally hit rock bottom. They had to move back to wherever they came from. And
Yeah.
then I still friends with a lot of people and from all over the world. And they're like, so much happier now, healthier now. Like Vegas killed me, like, morally, physically, emotionally, everything.
Yeah, for sure.
It's tough. If you can go back, would you do it all over again? Or what would you change?
Um, that's a tough question. You know, I do wish that I wish that I would have appreciated a little bit more what I actually had. I'm pretty philosophical in my old age, and I'm really big on sort of personal responsibility. So I believe that every decision that I've ever made has led me to where I am today. And so if I'd have changed anything, it may have had this ripple effect on my life that may have changed me into something that I don't recognize. I have a wife and a son now, amazing wife, amazing son. If I'd have changed even one thing back then, they may not be a part of my life. And so, no, I don't think I could change anything. Again, I do think I wish I would have appreciated the job. Um, but no, I wouldn't change anything. And no, I just couldn't do it again. Like I couldn't go back. as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, I control my own destiny. Um, I built an incredible business. I help so many other business owners grow their own businesses. We help other people, employ people in their communities. We're job creators. We stimulate economies in small towns. I would have to be pretty desperate to go back. It can be easy money, and it can be, but it's also a trap. I I would have to be in a really, really bad place to go back, I think.
Now, when did you realize that you wanted to get out of the hospitality industry's golden handcuffs and you're just wanted to get out of the whole thing and change your lifestyle?
Um, I've always been an entrepreneur. Back in the 70s in Vegas, 79, somewhere in there, I had a paper route. As a kid, we didn't have a lot of money. And so having that ability to generate what little income that did, I could go to the fire station, over on Upland there or whatever, and get a candy bar and a soda if I wanted. I could go play video games at the cozy corner. Um, that I think that started something in me, and I've always had this sort of desire to succeed. And being in the casino business, like I said, seeing those people in all these other opportunities and doing all these things that you just didn't know were revenue generators. I've always sort of believed that if another human being can do something or learn something, that I probably can too. Um, and so this is going to sound awful, but I used to sit across from guys playing 10,000 a hand in blackjack, you know, and I'd think to myself, I'm smarter than this guy. Like, I'm smarter than he is, but there's something I'm missing. There's something that I'm missing here, because there must be this other world out there that I don't understand. And I mean, I clearly, I knew I could count higher than 21. So I felt like I was I was trapped in this thing where I wasn't being able to use my brain as much as I'd liked. Obviously I learned to count cards, and I got to watch players in surveillance and do that sort of stuff. Um, but I always knew that I wanted more. Um, it's kind of a fine line between, being content and not being happy. So you need to be on the side of that just still drives you, because sometimes being content, you get stuck. And so I've always had drive for more things. And I guess I always knew that there was opportunity out there for a young kid like me. I mean, I just knew that there was something more for me than blackjack.
And what do you think your time frame was from when you first thought where you like, okay, there's got to be more, to when you actually like were able to get out and resign?
Well, in the beginning, I'm just like, it was so exciting. Like I went from hardware store to Siegfried and Roy showroom to Golden Nugget, or Barbie Coast to Golden Nugget to, I mean, this was just this upward trajectory. I mean, I was dealing at the place in Vegas, and I was dealing at the highest level there. I was in the high limit pit. I was dealing in salon. I was dealing to the biggest players, Kerry Packer, all the big, the big whales. Like, I got to do that. But at some point I realized I was topping out. I was plateauing. I didn't have a college degree. So I assumed, or I thought at the time, that sort of the next step, the pit boss level, was like out of reach for me. And like I said, I've always sort of been entrepreneurial, and at some point, I think I was probably when I was at Treasure Island, I bought a computer from a guy who was building computers out of his garage. And he worked there at Treasure Island, bought a computer from him, and I went to pick it up. And in his garage, he just had like these motherboards and sticks of memory and monitors and cases. And he was building computers. And I was just, dude, I was so fascinated. I mean, I couldn't, I was watching the birth of like the home PC industry. It was nuts. And he was able to build them there. So I bought one, and I think it was like $1,000. It had like a Pentium 100, had the first Pentium processor. I think it might have had 4 megabytes of RAM, not gigs, 4 megabytes of RAM, and I think probably either a 20 or 40 megabyte hard drive. And so I tore it apart. Like, I got that thing home, and it just opened up this whole new world to me. Like, I knew that this was for me. Like, I knew there was something here for me. And so um, I think somewhere along the way, I was playing with that computer. started building websites. I built in 1996, I built one of the first online auctions. We went head to head with eBay. It
Wow.
was, it took about a year and they crushed us. Caused, a marriage to fail. It was a rough time. And I'd go to work 8 hours a day. I'd come home to 150, 200 emails, just, problems and this and that. And one day I walked in and I just turned it all off, probably a little too soon. And I wish I knew now what I knew then. I would have fought harder. Um, but now, I mean, now, Sean, I've got a digital marketing agency. I have 11 employees. I help hundreds of businesses generate millions of dollars in revenue, and I mentor other agencies to do the same. And so my time frame there, probably 5 or 6 years in, I knew I wanted out. I knew that I had to do something different. Um, I've always wanted to be at the top of my profession, but like I said, I plateaued. I didn't have that college degree, and I always just sort of thought of the other stuff that I did on the side as a side hustle. At some point there, I'm just like, when one of those side hustles sort of like caught up to my income, I'm like, okay, now I'm sort of stuck. Now I'm like, I can't push either one of these higher. I'm plateaued at the Mirage. I'm plateaued in my e-commerce business. And then, at that point, I think I realized that I needed out.
So you're a dealer. You bought a computer from a guy building them in his garage and just kind of taught yourself how to use it and what to do.
Exactly. 100% self-taught. The internet's an amazing place.
See, guys, there's no excuses. Anybody can, you put your head down, especially nowadays. I mean, there's so many resources online to teach yourself anything. Anybody can make a transition if you want it bad enough.
Oh man. And back then we didn't have Google then. I mean, we were using like Yahoo and Alta Vista and these other search engines. And knowledge was out there, but not like it is now. Now you have literally no excuse. You can start a business today. I mean, you can, I don't know, I guess if you wanted my advice on, if you were struggling to get out of whatever it is that you're trying to do, the advice that I give every entrepreneur is find a group of people you like to work with. Find a group of people that you like to work for or with, figure out what their biggest problem is, and spend the next 30, 60, 90 days coming up with a solution. Because if you can solve somebody's biggest problem and be excellent at that and deliver that solution, you'll make plenty of money. I don't care what it is. I don't care what industry it's in. I don't care if it's a hobby, if it's a thing. If you solve somebody's biggest problem and in a group of people, there's plenty of opportunity there for you.
Absolutely. I've heard that several times from several very successful entrepreneurs. That's the main key. So how did you feel that day that you knew you were going to go into Treasure Island and resign? Like your resignation letter, I'm done. This is it.
Oh man, I was at the Mirage. I was at the sort of the peak place. It was going really well. I was dealing, and I was actually on the floor now. I was wearing a suit to work. I had it really good. I had 3 or 4 weeks paid vacation. I had health insurance. All of those things. I walked in one night. I just knew I just had to give my 2 weeks notice. And I went to my shift boss and I said, look, I'm going to give you my 2 weeks notice tonight. And he's like, hey, cool. Congratulations. And I said, all right, great. And then that was basically it. And then as the night went on, as I was working, I don't know, somewhere by 5 or 6 hours into my shift, I went to him again and I said, do you really need me to stay the next 2 weeks? And he said, you want to go tonight? I'm like, yes. And he's like, okay, you're done tonight. So I went from like having 2 weeks to sort of prepare to having 2 hours and I was out. And it was scary. Like the health insurance was the kind of the biggest thing. I was 34 probably when I got out. I was worried about that, but I was also confident. I was confident in my ability to solve problems. I was confident in my ability to help people. I was confident in my ability to survive. And it was pretty frightening to actually give the notice and then a couple hours later to realize like I have like a couple hours left in this place. I may never come back. It's nuts.
Yeah, so something changes when you're ready to put your 2 weeks notice in. Like you don't want to ride out that 2 weeks. Like you're mentally you're checked out. You're done. You want to start the next chapter in your life.
Well, what's cool about that is in the casino business, especially if you're standing over $3 million in a blackjack table or whatever, they don't want you to stay.
Yeah.
They literally, they don't want to watch you for 2 weeks. They don't want to, there's so much risk for people that are leaving to be tempted and that sort of thing. I mean, that's not me, but but I think they want you out. If you want out, they don't want you there. They don't want to have the liability, and they don't want to have to watch you. So it kind of worked out for me that they were like, yeah, sure, cool. You're gone.
Yeah,
So
that happens in a lot of industries. They'll have security to walk you off property. They'll close down your email, so they don't want you taking any pertinent information and all that stuff. So it kind of helps speed along your timeline, which is great.
yeah, so
If you're
so
looking to
so
get
in a
out.
in a blink, my 15-year casino career was over. I mean, it's nuts.
So now, were you still in Vegas, or were you planning on staying in Vegas then, or you already had plans to move out?
Well, at that time, I planned on staying in Vegas. I ended up getting. I wasn't I wasn't married yet. I was dating my current wife, and we had no plans for babies or anything. Like, but we did, get engaged shortly after that. We planned on getting married, and found out we were pregnant, and that of course changed everything. So at that point, now I want to figure out how to get her out. She was still in when we had a baby, and she had her 6 weeks paid leave of absence or whatever. She's just like, I'm not going back. We got to figure this out, but I'm not going back. And so we made that work out too.
That's awesome. Well, was she a dealer as well?
She was a floor supervisor in the baccarat pit at the Mirage,
Oh, nice.
and I was a floor supervisor in blackjack. So
So many wonderful stories come out of people working together and finding love and then leaving the city.
yeah, I mean, hey, look, I got really lucky. I mean, I know it doesn't always work out like that. I had a prior marriage that partly being an entrepreneur ruined. Like, all my focus was like, how do we keep up with the Joneses? How do we get a bigger house? How do we get more cars? How do we, and I was working at the Treasure Island 8 hours a day, and then I'd come home and work on my auction stuff for another 8 hours a day, and I never, I didn't pay her attention, and I didn't, I was so driven that I basically drove everyone else away. So that's a challenge too.
Yeah, I remember we talked about that in our digital marketing mastermind group. God, probably a year ago. Just how relationships, because we spend so much time locked in an office, staring at our computer, trying to build things, and then relationships, partner feels neglected, or we don't have time, or whatever. It's but trying to build businesses, and when you're an entrepreneur, and then holding that personal accountability as well, it's a hard balance sometimes.
Yeah, life's hard, man. It's hard to balance all of these things, and as I look back, sometimes I think, man, I could have stayed in the casino forever, and I could have just went in and collected my paycheck, and I could have lived my other 16 hours a day as I wanted. We could have had our health insurance, we could have had everything, but someone else would have raised my child. He would have gone to schools that maybe aren't quite up to the standards that I would hope, and my life would be incredibly different. I don't regret it for 1 second, making the decisions that I made.
That's awesome, man. And a lot of people, like, the whole point of this, we're not knocking hospitality. Like, if you're happy and content and it's great, I mean, the money could be good as long as you build a good balance of a lifestyle around it. More power to you. I mean, trust me, there's a lot of times when I was struggling, I'm like, God, why did I quit? Why did I stay? And I walked away from 6 figures multiple times just to do my own thing because I knew I could do it.
Yeah, I think for me, I just I don't know, maybe I wasn't strong enough. Like, maybe I wasn't strong enough to handle all of that. And then there are people that are, and there are people that can do it, and there are people that it makes sense for. Like, because the hospitality industry can be rewarding. I mean, when I became a blackjack dealer, I said, you know what, I'm going to be the best blackjack dealer in this place, and I thought I did that. When I got promoted to the floor, I'm telling myself I'm going to be the best floor supervisor in here. I I took it as a challenge, and you can find passion in things you're great at. If you're great at it and you're passionate about it, I think passion comes from greatness. You can love something, but to truly be passionate about it, I think it kind of goes hand in hand with being great at it. And so develop whatever you do. I don't care if it's a hospitality industry or being a bartender or being a dealer or whatever. If you embrace that mindset of like, I am going to own this and I'm going to be amazing at it, you can have a passion in anything. I mean, if you're going to go be a real estate agent, if you want to leave the industry, go sell real estate, be the best damn real estate agent you can. You know, you want to start a business, be the best damn business person you can. Just do the best you can. I think that's where passion comes from. I don't think it comes from mediocrity. I don't think it comes from just mailing it in. I think that passion and that drive comes from being excellent at something.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Cool.
That's awesome. Do you, Lyn, you got any advice? Well, you kind of dropped some awesome advice nuggets right there. Do you got any more advice or anything you want to add before we cut this out?
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, I think advice wise, look, there's an expression that says, you know, wherever you go, there you are. Like the grass isn't greener on the other side. If you want to be in the hospitality industry, like I said, embrace it. Be the best you can at it. It you know, I moved from Vegas to Louisiana, and to go out to a restaurant here and to see the quality difference in service is it's astonishing. I mean, it's hard to believe the lack of care that a person gets outside of that industry in restaurants and that sort of thing in small towns and places. Um, you know, I always ask, like I do a lot of seminars for business and I try and get people to be remarkable and deliver remarkable experiences. And, you know, one of the examples that I always use is like, what does it take for you to walk away from a restaurant saying, wow, that was a good waitress? So the bar is so low, Sean. It's like, were they attentive? Did they fill my water when I needed it? That's pretty much it. Like,
Yeah.
and you know, that's outside of Vegas, I think, and I think that's true in a lot of places. And so, it doesn't take much for you to stand out. It doesn't take much for you to be excellent at something. It doesn't take much for you to walk into any job or whatever. And if you will put in the effort, um, my son's a remarkable student, and I've always told him like, you just be you. You be good at stuff. You will get noticed. They'll notice you. You do the right things. If you work hard, you're going to get noticed. You don't have to go, hey, look at me. The people who matter will notice you working hard. And I think that's true, whatever job it is, you know, real estate, hospitality, bartending, waitressing, dealing, internet marketing, whatever it is.
That's awesome, man. Hey, it was so great to see you again and catch up with you. You got to let me know next time you're back here in Vegas.
Yeah, for sure. I don't get out there much. My son is now 18. He was born in Vegas. I'm, you know, I'm scared for that draw of him ever wanting to go back, you know. But yeah, I'm sure we'll visit someday, you know, and show him where he grew up and show him where I grew up. It's, you know, and I want to thank you for this sort of amazing little trip down memory lane. I haven't thought of these things in ages, and you know, thinking back through some of this, you know, some of the stories, and you know, some I can tell and some I can't. You know, it's pretty cool to kind of take that little trip down memory lane. And now you know that I appreciate what you're doing with this podcast, like just being able to share stories and if you've got a minute, like all I want to say is this: like, sometimes you can get stuck in this mentality like you don't know what else is out there. You know, in business I talk about like growing up in a small town, and this is my example. I grew up in a small town. Some people never leave, and some people never get outside of that, and they never see what's actually possible. And so with my son, you know, we grew up in a small town, but I want him to see that there's this whole other world out there. So we travel and we go to Los Angeles, we go to museums, and we go to Houston, we go to Florida, and we go and we travel and we see things. And I want him to understand that this world isn't, you're not stuck in this little tiny box of Crowley, Louisiana. It's an amazing place. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying anything bad about Crowley. I'm just saying that to 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 be sort of stuck mindset wise in that box and not know what's possible, I think is what really holds people back from making big changes in their lives. And I don't know, just the fact that you're giving people the opportunity to listen to these kind of stories. Um, I mean, I hope that my story helps other people sort of, you know, follow their own dreams and, you know, live a life that they absolutely love.
Awesome, man. Yeah, the whole point of this is really just to help try to inspire and motivate other people to, take a chance on themselves and don't get stuck in that, that one lane and just, see what else is out there. You try. You can always fall back on bartending. You can always fall back on being a dealer. If it doesn't work out, Vegas is always here. There's plenty of markets where you can do this, but you got to take the chance on yourself. You never know what you're capable of until your back's against the wall and you have to do it.
Life is incredibly forgiving. You can screw up really bad when you're young, and you can make a lot of bad decisions, but life and people in general are incredibly forgiving. There's time for you to make a change in your life, and wrong the pat, fix your past wrongs, right your past wrongs, that sort of thing. Find the path that's right for you. I mean, there's time. So go out and grab it.
I agree. Awesome, Lyn. Hey, thank you again for your time. So good to catch up with you, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Hey, this was super fun. I hope it helps, and thanks for inviting me on.
All right. Thanks, Lyn. Take care.
My pleasure.